The 7 modes of the major scale each have a variety of sounds that they can access, but they also each have one character that seems to come out best. In my mind, the word that sums up the Phrygian scale is threatening. The Phrygian Mode, for those who don't already know, is a minor scale but with a flattened second. This flat second scale degree is the characteristic note of the mode which sets it apart from the other major modes, and it's this note that gives the Phrygian Mode its threatening aura. For a case test, you need look no further than your favorite song about a shark. Well, no, not that one. The theme from Jaws by John Williams. This theme is made up entirely of the root and flat second notes of its key, with no other notes getting in the way, and it's easily the most threatening piece of music in film history. In video games, we see the Phrygian Mode used in a few different ways, but almost always to signify some kind of threat, accompanying a vicious boss battle, a powerful enemy force, or entry into hostile territory. The easiest real-world example to give for the Phrygian scale in video game music is the Battle with Magus theme from Chrono Trigger. This is because the melody is quite literally a Phrygian scale. We start on a high E and walk down the E Phrygian scale all the way to a low E. First, we hear it slow and brooding. And then much quicker, over a frenzied, syncopated 6/8 groove. In both cases, the theme signifies the danger at hand, whether in the form of dread leading up to an encounter you know is going to kick your ass, or in the heat of battle trying to survive this evil sorcerer's onslaught. The Phrygian scale works beautifully to capture this threat, even in this entirely unembellished form. The rhythm of the scale is set smartly, with the root and fifth landing on beat 1 of the strongest bars in the phrase, and the other notes in the scale simply leading us between these key points. The low strings in the intro establish the basic idea of the tune's bass line, a 1 to flat 2 to 1 to flat 3 movement that places the root note E again on the strongest bars of the phrase. It fills the space between these E's with the characteristic notes of the E Phrygian sound, the flat second and the minor third. Both of these melodic ideas showcase how the flat second works functionally, that is, how badly it wants to resolve down to the root. See, in normal keys, major or minor, the second scale degree is a melodically dissonant note that wants to resolve downward to the tonic. If you plunk out a chord on the piano and play the second on top, you can see for yourself how good it feels to let that note fall down to the root. Shrinking this space between root and second from a whole step to a half step makes that desired resolution even more salivating, and so these flat seconds pull even more strongly towards the root than regular seconds do, a motion that is obliged by both the melody and the bass line in the Battle with Magus theme. Another example of this can be seen in the Gestahl Empire theme from Final Fantasy VI. This theme is a leitmotif used in a few different places throughout the soundtrack, but let's check out the track Troops March On for a clear example. Once again, the feeling of coming up against a powerful, evil opposing force comes through as the melody leaps up from the root to the fifth of the C minor key, then winds its way down a C Phrygian scale to resolve back to the root. Again, the tonality is very strongly stated. The characteristic flat second note of the Phrygian Mode is used as a passing note that quickly resolves. It could be that the strength with which the flat second pulls towards the root makes the darkness of the minor tonic come through more strongly. Like, we all know that minor chords and keys generally sound dark and sad, and the stronger a resolution to the tonic chord is, the more it emphasizes the darkness and minorness of the key, if that makes sense. This emphasis seems to take the solemn sound of the natural minor scale and turn it into something more menacing. Those Who Fight, the first battle theme from Final Fantasy VII, gives us a good way to isolate this effect. The piece starts with these intense stabbing string chords, punctuating the F minor tonality with these flat seconds in both the melody and the bass line that each resolve down neatly to the tonic F pretty much right away. This intro is painted with an F Phrygian sound, but as we move on to the section that immediately follows, we switch into regular minor mode with this harmonized horn melody just about walking straight up an F natural minor scale. Hearing these two sections back to back, the regular F minor section feels light and hopeful in comparison to the intensity of the Phrygian sound, a perfect example of the effect the Phrygian scale can have on a piece of music. It's no coincidence that this scale plays a big part in the musical identity of the baddest villains and fiercest battles of some of the most beloved RPGs in history, and so it'll come as no surprise that the next example I have for you today comes from Zoombinis. No, I'm serious, Zoombinis. Actually, I have no idea if this game is known at all outside of the early 2000s Canadian elementary school curriculum, but I logged hours into this game in school. I've had the theme music stuck in my head for literally 20 years, and that paid off because I was whistling the Zoombinis theme to myself in the kitchen while taking a break from researching for this video, and it hit me that this theme too has that threatening Phrygian aura. The main melody of the theme begins with this iconic D to G to E flat melodic cell, then works its way up the Phrygian scale to the flat sixth and back, always spending extra time to emphasize and embellish the flat second E flat before resolving it down to the root D. That initial three-note cell is expanded by the low marimba bass line, leaping from D to G to E flat to A, then playing the original three notes in quicker succession before resolving that flat second once again down to the root. This is a different kind of threat than the frenzied panic of Magus's battle theme or the cold militarism of the Empire Gestahl. It's the threat of venturing into unknown territory, ignorant to the exact kind of horrors that await you but not ignorant to their presence. These Zoombinis take a long and perilous journey, and I don't know about your playthroughs, but a good chunk of my Zoombini population did not survive the expedition. The bass figure from the Zoombini theme actually brings me to an interesting point though. A lot of the time, when we try to build a single chord that's characteristic of a mode or captures the sound of a mode, this involves taking the tonic, major, or minor triad and then tacking on whatever characteristic note defines the mode in question on top. You definitely can do this for the Phrygian mode, taking the tonic minor triad and adding the flat second to get a minor flat 9 chord. But it seems like a more interesting and more common type of Phrygian chord is the sus4 flat 9 chord. In other words, if we took this Zoombini bass figure and squished all the notes together into one chord, we'd get a D sus4 with an added flat second or flat ninth in there too, which sounds like this.
There's something there I hate!
This chord has a lot more power than the minor triad with the flat second added, and it seems to better capture that Phrygian sound than a stack of thirds does. There aren't too many examples of this chord in the wild, but here's what I dug up. First, the Norfair theme from the original Metroid starts off by taking this sus flat 2 chord shape and moving it around to different root notes in a really low range. The dissonance of having these notes crammed so close together at such a low range, combined with the off-kilter rhythmic phrasing, makes this piece truly unbearable to listen to. But that actually fits to make the world feel more alien and uninviting. Samus is making her way through a strange and dangerous planet after all. There's a section in the track Leavetaking from Kuni II, composed by the great Joe Hisaishi, that sits on an F-sharp sus4 flat 9 chord for about 4 bars. The piece is in the key of B minor, so this is an example of a diatonic 5 chord in that key rather than an example of an F-sharp Phrygian piece, but it's still an example of an F-sharp Phrygian sound, at least for these 4 bars, especially if I remove the B minor bits on either end when playing you the example. The light instrumentation here offsets the sense of threat, turning it more into a sense of unease. Imagine whispering as you try and sneak through a castle at night without getting caught as you listen to this segment. This chord has been leveraged into an extremely colorful, beautiful sound, the way that everything Joe Hisaishi touches seems to. The ending from Japan-only Game Boy game For the Frog the Bell Tolls features a variation on this chord, an F minor triad over a G bass note, or a G7 sus flat 9. It's not used for a modal sound, but as a hyper-dissonant dominant chord that resolves to a C over G, and the threatening sound of the chord, emphasized by the hectic arpeggio barrage on top of this bass pedal, makes the subsequent resolution feel like a huge relief. The Game Boy sound chip couldn't play enough voices simultaneously to give us a whole sus4 flat 9 chord at once, but there is a bit in the Pokemon Trainer battle theme from the original Pokemon Red and Blue where we get these rhythmic A minor chord stabs with a flat 9th and no 3rd. This inner voice moves from the flat 2nd, B flat, to the root, to the flat 3rd, and then back to the flat 2nd, and there's no denying the sense of anxiety this provokes. Being both a flat 9th interval away from the root, the most dissonant interval there is, as well as a tritone away from this 5th above it, which is the runner-up, gives this flat 2nd note a uniquely perturbing quality. Perfect for giving battles the intensity that you would want them to have. I think I've made the case for the threatening sound of the Phrygian mode, so now I want to give us some counterexamples. Using the characteristic flat 2nd note in a tune's melody, or building a Phrygian chord with it is great, but another approach to using this mode is to build a different chord that uses this characteristic scale degree and then weave it into a chord progression with the tonic chord. We did kind of see tunes do this in a few of our earlier examples with the Magus battle theme from Chrono Trigger, as well as Final Fantasy VII's Those Who Fight, trading the tonic minor chord with the minor flat 7 chord in first inversion, so that we get this nice flat 2-to-1 movement in the bass line. Another chord we could build that would use the flat 2nd of the key would be the major flat 2 chord, the relative major chord to our minor flat 7. It might seem like a very subtle difference between these two, especially when the flat 7 chords are showing up in first inversion, but I find that flat 2 chords usually have a much brighter sound and effect on the music. Hollow Bastion from Kingdom Hearts is built mostly of an extended B minor vamp that's planted squarely in the natural minor or Aeolian scale. But towards the end of the piece we get a section that trades between B minor and its flat 2 chord, C major. Super Metroid's Brinstar Red Soil Wetlands area theme is built off of a repeated 2-chord vamp that trades the tonic, E flat minor, with its flat 2, F flat major 13, with the melody maintaining an E flat minor sound over top of each. The Pokemon Trainer battle theme that we heard earlier features another section that trades between A minor and B flat chords as well. The flat 2 chord in each of these examples feels almost hopeful, which makes sense considering they're all big, colorful major chords, often topped off with pretty chord extensions like major 7ths and sharp 11ths. But there's also a lot more nuance to them than that. listening to each example, there's still a grimness to the music, in spite of the major color of the flat 2 chord. It's almost like we're in a hopeful place, but we know that it can't last. And truly, when the flat 2 chord moves back down to the minor tonic, it makes it hit that much harder. A very cool sound, but I'll admit, threatening is not the right word to describe it. Well, there you go. I hope you gained some appreciation for the Phrygian scale and what it can do. The strength of the flat second pulling down to the root gives more weight to that minor tonic, and the dissonance of that flat second against the root adds to this effect to make Phrygian the meanest mode of them all. If you liked what you saw, consider checking out my Patreon page. I've been uploading bonus bits for patrons where I talk much more casually about points that didn't fit into my script for each video, available for supporters at any tier level. For this video, I'm going to talk about how, even though the Phrygian mode is kind of stereotyped as the desert music mode, there is actually a different scale that's used for every generic desert theme. If you want to support the channel and that sounds interesting to you, feel free to go ahead and check it out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.